Hey, I'm Jacob. Thanks for sharing your work. I'm excited to look at it and talk about it with you. You had said simply that you're a game animator and the theme is the Rose Killer. Let me double check that. Yes, Rose Killer. Cool. So let's jump in, take a look. It's a pretty long clip, which is impressive, and I have some things that I want to share with you to see if we can push it a little bit. Let's jump in. All right. Here we go. Hold on, my computer just chugged. I'm gonna try again. Cool. Alright, I'm gonna turn off the sound. There's a lot happening here. This is a really long fight scene. It's really cool. I have some ideas that I want to share. So, I think first and foremost, my thought is clarity. Where can we find ways to make everything even more clear and make sure that the audience follows all of the action? Right off the bat, the first thing that I notice is that, actually the first thing I didn't notice, which is kind of the point, is I didn't notice that it was a rose that turned into her, or that she came from the rose. There's only, 15 frames of it being a rose, maybe less than that. Really 11 frames of it being a rose before it starts morphing into her. Oh, looks like there's a render error on the first frame too. But I had to watch it a second time before I even noticed that it started off as a rose, and then it turned into her. So I think probably presenting this a little bit more. It's also very small in frame, and it's not really drawing your eye too much. It has bright colors, but there's so much noise happening all over the place. If you were to kind of highlight that area and make sure that our eye knew where to look right off the bat. If this is the highest contrast piece, which it kind of is, but barely at the moment, because there is so much happening. Actually, this might be the highest contrast part from this darkness to this lightness. So there's a lot of things competing for attention here, and using the light or the saturation or a little bit of everything to kind of draw our eye to the right spot can be really helpful, and extending that time that we get with the rose a little bit longer. 11 frames probably isn't enough. In combination with a moving camera and the scissors, there's a lot to read in 11 frames, right? And so if you spent longer with her being a rose, longer with the rose itself before it turned into her, I think we get a better, clearer read on it. Then the scissors as well. So I mentioned that there's a lot to take in those first 11 frames. So you also have the scissors kind of chomping there at the beginning, which is great setting up, but it's also competing for attention with the rose. So if you do have the ability to make a 500 frame shot, I would use more of those frames to make sure the audience understands the concept that we're heading into right away, and then maybe take some frames out of some action bits here or there. So that might mean clearer staging of the scissors and the rose, and for a little bit longer, so that you can show one, then the other, and then it changes. Something like that. And it doesn't have to be this exact camera. It could be tighter in or closer in or something like that. Anyway, that's my first thought, is clarity of making sure the audience follows along with what's happening right away, and we get the concept. All right, next. Oh, you know what? Actually, on that point, I wanted to bring up that it feels a little bit like maybe you added the sound way after doing the animation, because they don't always sync up. Let me see. Okay, so the clip of the scissors. Right here, it's happening before the scissors actually snap together. And the second time it works well. And there's a handful of spots that feel like that, where it feels like there's not quite this connected sound. So maybe it's that you found sound effects afterwards and threw them onto the animation. I would try in the future to gather sound effects as you're working so that you can animate to them, so that you get that speed, the sharpness of that sound, if that's what you're going for. Otherwise, those things start to feel a little disconnected, and it kind of takes you out of it for a second, that they don't really line up. That the sound feels real abrupt, but the motion is kind of soft. And the same thing with kind of some footsteps here or there, things like that. In order to better sync those, sometimes it's helpful to get them while you're animating and animate to them, because they can help. You can almost find the rhythms that you want to hit within the sound effects and build up like an audio track that has that, like the melody that you want to play, of the boom, clack, da-da-da-da, boom, ch-ch, whatever it might be, that you don't always feel when you're only watching something. And so it can be helpful to balance those two and find the rhythms in the sounds and the animation while you're working, and build them up together so that you force yourself into those melodies, those variations, that kind of musical, as you go. And then they'll kind of be playing off of each other. The visuals will play off the sound, and the sound will play off the visuals as you start building things up and realize, I should trim frames out of that one so that it happens quicker. Things like that. Both of those things working in unison can create some really awesome stuff. All right, what's next? So when she comes out of being the rose, excuse me, it feels a little bit strange to me that her legs are bent, because it feels like a great opportunity to have them just as the stalk, the stem of the rose. And then if it starts off that way, then maybe she can start to curl up into this, so that she brings one leg up like you have for her landing, while they started off both being down with the stem, and then she brings one up as she is landing, and I think that would make some nice opposing action, because her body's going down but her leg's going up, and that'll work nicely. All right, then let's get into some action. Cool. Turn off the sound. A nice scrub to not bother your ears. I feel like this is another case where we could work on the clarity of what's happening here. It's pretty cluttered. Like, this is directly on top of the scissors. You get a little bit of hint of where that contact actually is, which is right there, but it's not staged in a way where that's super clear. So there's a million ways to solve this. One might be having the sword over here and making it a little bit clearer that this is contacting right here, so that you're separating those pieces out and her arm is more outstretched. That might work well. Or, let's see what else. Another one, maybe if you twist the scissors more so that these pieces are kind of like that, and then instead the top of the sword is here and it's contacting there, and the scissors are on top of the sword. Like that might help, and then that would mean that it would be a different pose for her, because her arm would have to be up like that, I guess, but to get that contact there. But trying to find some way of staging, I like that one better. Pushing the staging a little bit to clarify that contact and what happened there, and what made both of them stop their motion. All right, and then this is cool, how she throws the scissors back. We're kind of losing the fluidity of the pose here. Like, her arm comes into here and then it drops down, and then this is not a very connected, flowy pose. You probably want this arm to be more behind her head and connected back there where we wouldn't see it, but her shoulder up there, so it's more like that instead of dropped shoulder but elbow up and out. It's feeling a little disconnected. The flow isn't quite there. That's cool. I like that whip where she's smacking the scissors together. And this is a cool effect there. That's nice. I think you can go a little further with the strength of this pose at the end. Like, could she have this be more of a straight arm as she follows through like that? Right now it's kind of weak because it's doing this, but if you had a really strong line and then also connect, like I was saying, connecting the arm back there through the back. And so one thing I like to try to do is make it so that whether it's across the front or across the back, is the flow of the arms is always connected, so that you always feel this connection between, like, so here might be a good example. It's doing this, then this, then this. So there isn't that flow. But if you were to drop this shoulder a little bit so that it's like this, and then raise this arm up, then you've got, this isn't a great drawing. There's a lot of bright colors in this, so I'm actually struggling to find a color that stands out. Then you have that flow from one arm to the next across the shoulders, kind of like from elbow to elbow. How can you make them flow through the chest and through the shoulders and across into the arms so that there's one connected piece throughout there? I do like what you have with the lower body and the way that the legs are spread out, and it feels like she has this nice triangle of support that's working well. But here, yeah, this pose is not very strong on her arm, especially the bent wrist. So you'd want the whole thing to be kind of flowing together, including the wrist, so that it's all one fluid. How do I show that? Like that. Right now it's kind of doing this, which is not, if I make that the sword, it's not one fluid pose, but you can get the arm and the wrist, everything together, and then also the sword in line with it. So actually, let's tilt the sword more so that it's like that, so that the sword is included in that line of action. It goes like that. All right. Oh, I see. You are bending to twist like this and then push the sword that way. I definitely wouldn't be in that pose here like I drew. But then if you do this and then in this breakdown, then you have this leading with the front of the sword. I think that can work. Here's another place where it feels like, gosh, I can't find a color that really stands out, which goes also to show that maybe you could desaturate some pieces and find ways to use color and saturation to draw the audience's eye, because there are so many bright colors. You don't really know where to look. There's so many things going on. Like the saturation of this is almost as strong as the saturation of this and this. And there's so many things competing for our attention. The green here is kind of competing with all the greens back here. So find ways to push the things that you want us to see more so that they draw more attention, they have higher contrast, things like that. All right, but this is another case where it doesn't quite feel like there's a flow across the shoulders and through the arm. So maybe in this case, you put the shoulder up here, drop this shoulder down so that you get this flow across there, which might work nice. And then as she gets the sword pushed away, then you get this flow. And so you're kind of close there. Wonder what would happen if you pushed this arm up like that. It would help the flow. I would experiment with it about getting this, raise this arm up here so that there's this flow between them, so that she is doing that. And so that one arm is down. You can't really see on the webcam, can you? One arm is down, one arm is up. This is cool, but again, probably raise the shoulder here so that you get the flow between, across the back, across the chest. Right now, it's a little disconnected. All right, moving on. You've got some cool choreography here. Again, it's just hard to track because there's so much to look at. You might exaggerate this hold right here. Oops. If you just 2 or 3 more frames even would allow us the ability to really feel that moment before it changes again. Right now there's so much constant motion that there is never a really felt held pose. And so if you find the coolest one, or the one where they kind of, they're trading blows, and then there's one where they meet and they're kind of equals, pause for a moment and then expand again, blow them away from each other again. That might be a good way to break up the rhythm and make us feel that moment. But right now it's just always moving, so it's hard to track and hard to find a moment to breathe. Maybe 2 or 3 frames is even too short. Maybe like 6 frames to really sell that moment before things change. Oh my gosh, he's doing a flip with the scissors. That is awesome. And I never saw it. I've watched this several times, and I've never seen it until frame stepping through right now. That's really cool. Never noticed. There's just so much happening. The camera's moving around a lot. There's this constant feeling of boom, 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 boom with their contacts. And so that comes back again to the rhythm like I was talking about. Maybe you go boom, 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 like that. And that's again where, like, with sound effects, there have been times where for my own shot I have just done that and set into the microphone boom, 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 and put that as my audio track, so that I am forced to animate to that rhythm instead of getting stuck in this kind of boom, 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 boom sort of thing that I might accidentally get into while animating it. And so locking myself into the rhythm that I want, or making it feel like there is this pacing switch up, or finding the right variation in timing, like a melody, like music, can help it to help guide you while you're animating it, to make sure that those moments hit the way you want them to. And so this might be a case of that, because it feels so constant. The attacks are so constant, the clanging or the contacts are so constant that there's never a moment to breathe, and there's not a moment to see the cool moves that you have planned in here. So if you pace them out a little differently and choose those moments to really sell, then I think that you'll have a much stronger piece. And that might even mean removing some, so that you focus on the coolest ones. All right. Now, I'm not sure what happened there. This is hard to track. All right, so I totally get that she blocks the scissors. She gets pushed back. This is a cool moment that you could exaggerate and have her slide back an extra 6 or 8 frames or something to also give a breathing room and show this moment. But I don't know what happens here. This is a strange cut, and it feels a little jarring, I think. So I guess the scissors turn over and open, and then they turn over the top, and then land with her in between them. And then she jumps away right before they squeeze on her. Okay. All right, so the edit is a little bit jarring. It could be because of a couple different things. For one, right here, the camera's moving up, and then we cut, and the camera's moving to the right real fast for 1 frame, and then it stops real hard, and then it starts sinking down. And so the momentum of the camera is kind of all over the place. It's moving up, then it moves right, then it stops real fast, and there's that 1 frame that really feels out of place, that moves it to the right real fast, and then it stops hard. That might just be a stray key or something, but it contributes to the feeling that it's a little jarring, and we can't quite follow what's happening there. And then, on top of that, for the clarity of this moment, the scissors are constantly moving as well. So when we first get into this shot, the scissors are sliding screen left, or kind of twisting away from the camera. And then they change to twisting towards camera. And then they squeeze. And so all of that combined just means that it feels like it's always moving. And so there isn't that moment of anticipation of, like, it flips around, it gets set, and she's in danger, and it just holds, like, and then she goes, and jumps away. We don't get that moment of impending doom because it's always moving. And so if you get that hold, that anticipation where it feels like it's building to something because it moves fast and then stops and then is about to smash. But it doesn't have the same effect if it moves fast and then keeps moving fast and then also closes. I hope that makes sense. So I would calm down the scissors here so that they're not moving much. And then it feels like they're a little bit late on the close. You could probably have them start closing as she's lifting up so that they just barely miss. Like right here, her toe is right above it. So I would probably make it so that that foot is actually more like in the center of the scissors, and the scissors are already almost closed around her. Oops. I am not doing a good job of drawing this, but the idea being that they have just barely missed her because they're so close on that one frame, and then on the next frame they're shut while she is out of the way. But here we have an extra 1, 2, 3 frames before they're shut. And we've even changed camera cuts, changed to a different camera at the same time. So I would include in this close-up that smash, but just missing her. So rearrange the timing just a little bit. It's just a couple frames to make it feel like it misses her so close. But she narrowly escaped. That's cool. That's fun. Alright, so here's another thing about clarity that I don't quite feel this moment the way that I think you want to. So, the second time through, I was able to notice that he's got the sword in his hand. I did not get that before. For a couple reasons. One, it feels like she swipes at him like this, which would be a slice across the hand, not a stab, which feels like it's going into the hand. And so it doesn't quite line up to me that she lets go of this thing and it's in his hand because of the way she got to his hand, right? It's this big swipe, so it doesn't feel like it's going to go into his hand. It feels like it's going to cut across the knuckles. So I think it would have to go in instead of swipe. But then, contributing to the fact that I didn't quite notice it was that here, her hand and the sword are connected. And here, several frames later, they're kind of still connected. Not literally, but visually, they're very close. Like, we still have all of this as one shape. As opposed to if he maybe recoils his hand so that this is back here, and his hand is here, and then the sword is here, and her hand is separated. And so we have this space between them. Now we start to recognize that she's no longer holding the sword. But right now, they're still occupying the same screen space. They're still really close. They're just a little tiny bit separated, but they're still overlapping. Their silhouettes are still together. It doesn't necessarily feel like she's stopped holding it, especially with all the fast action going on. On a single frame, I can tell her hand is not attached, but they're so close. And with all the motion, you can't quite tell. So that makes the staging all the more important, that you want to see that if you want her to feel like she's no longer touching the sword, they need to move apart from each other. Their silhouettes need to be no longer contacting. You need to have negative space in the middle, and those things are really going to help sell it. And then when you switch to this shot, this happens to, like, the sword, it spends a lot of time perfectly lined up with this piece of his armor, so it's hitting this tangent where we can't quite see it. You can see this, and that's about it, but without seeing the sword piece attached to it, you're not quite sure what you're looking at. And so there's a few frames in here that are moving real fast before we get excuse me, before we get to this tangent where it's perfectly lined up with this other object that has about the same color and the same contrast. And this is even lined up with where this piece and this piece meet. So there's a lot of things that are working against you here for the clarity of that sword. So one thing that could help is, again, changing the contrast of some of the items or making it stand out more, but putting it like here so that it stands out even from his silhouette. It is above his armor here, and it's out in the open, and then you could desaturate the background or something to make it really pop. But it feels, and also tilt his head up so he's looking directly at that. All those things communicating towards getting that line, all of those things to line up towards seeing it much more clearly. Breaking his silhouette is one of the biggest ones. What you are doing here is you're doing a good job of having his eyes here, this kind of leading us here, and this kind of leading us here. That's a great instinct, and I think those things are working well, except for the contrast in the colors, the brightness, the tangent of the object against his armor, and not breaking the silhouette, and a couple things like that. Also, actually, the point of contact seems like it's behind here. And it looks like in the previous shot, it attached itself right here. So continuity-wise, it also feels like it's not as clear because we don't even see it going into the hand. We see it going into... Actually, it doesn't look like it's going to hit the hand. So there's a couple things that are stacked against you here, I guess. That's cool. Excuse me. You could probably, just like I was talking about with the scissors, you could make this a closer call. Like you could make it feel like she just escapes a little bit more. She's already kind of missing by a lot. So if you put her foot here and her leg here, and so her dress is like this, it might feel like it was much closer of a call that she almost got hit. That's a cool landing. It's a nice nice weight there, and then quick acceleration into the next piece. I think that works really well. I also like this jump to the right, change directions, and jump up onto his arm while she's holding her dress up. That's super cool and specific to her outfit, and it's really fitting in well. This is cool. Love that. That's cool. Excuse me. This works really well. It's cool. One thing that I think you could work on here is the camera. It feels like the camera follows her up real well and then just stops rotating. It's still translating back, but it stops rotating, and I think that if you ease out that rotation, it's also cool to have her go above frame, that's okay, but the rotation of the camera just locks, and that's what draws my attention. And then here, this landing is cool. That's real cool. That's cool. This is cool. You could probably push this by having, right in here, you want to get her arms straighter, I think. Here it's cool. But then by here, you want to have a lot more tension in there and get a line that goes all the way through here into that. All of this too, you want to have probably a straight arm. And then lastly, I feel like I would suggest just pushing the fireball straight towards him instead of it taking this path. I would instead just have it so that you can do all the same poses. It's just that she would release it a little bit earlier. She'd release it here so that it goes straight there, and then this here, and it might hit him a frame sooner or two. But it's kind of hard to track with why it goes that way and then that way. Just directly at him might be better. Cool blood splatter. And slamming his head down is cool. And then again, for the clarity, I feel like we only get to see her as the rose before everything locks. It locks at 497. We only get 5 frames of her as the rose. So If your intention is to have the shot go all the way to 511, that's cool. We do get to see her as the rose enough, but keep the camera settling, keep the petals settling, keep his giant shoulder settling or something, but it feels like we can feel everything just lock solid at that frame, so it kind of breaks the momentum, and it breaks your I guess I'm losing the words, but breaks the immersion into it, and we see it for being a CG thing instead of watching these characters interact, I guess. All right, so cool. I hope these things helped. You have a lot of awesome stuff here, and it can benefit from just pushing the clarity in a lot of different ways in a lot of different places. And so I hope this helped illuminate some of those things that you could try for the next one. Keep up the good work, and thanks for sharing, and I hope to see you again. Thanks. Bye-bye.